Hey, welcome everybody to Lead for Success. And what we're going to talk about quickly is an overview of Lead for Success, and then we're going to get right into the content. And we're going to, as you know, we're here for 2 days, and we're going to talk about 4 key fundamentals that are important for your success as a leader. So first, I want to thank you for volunteering. Did you know you volunteered to be here today? I know your organization sent you, and you might have been voluntold to be here. But you're in those chairs because you've already demonstrated some great leadership potential, or you wouldn't be sitting here with us today. So when you think about what makes good leadership, what are some things that come into your mind? What are some key competencies? What are some key topics that you've mastered as a leader that have really put you in the chair where you are right now? So give me some ideas. Think about that for a moment. And now I'm going to ask, what are some key things that you've done, that you've learned, that have put you in the chairs where you are today?
Communication and organization.
Communication and organization. I like how those two things go together. We're going to talk about both of those things.
Sense of humor.
Yeah, sense of humor. It's interesting, there have been studies that have said that of the 2 critical competencies around the world that people want in their leaders, one is a sense of calm, and the other one is a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about maintaining your sense of humor as you go through challenging leadership environments through our course over the next couple of days. So we actually asked in our research here at the Center for Creative Leadership the same question. And we've identified a number of competencies that contribute to leadership success. And then we broke down those competencies through more research to identify what are the 4 key areas that are most important. And here they are. And this is what we're going to be talking about over the next couple of days, these 4 key areas. And we're going to talk about self-awareness, learning agility, influence, and just like Al said, communication. And we're going to break each one of these down into 4 key characteristics that you can apply back in the workplace. So get ready. I'm going to go through some quick definitions here. And over the next 2 days, we're going to unpack these definitions so you can take this back to your workplace. And you can put it to work the day after tomorrow. So the first, of course, is self-awareness. Because at CCL, we believe that leadership begins from the inside out. So you want to know yourself in order to know others. And we started identifying, well, what are the key parts of self-awareness that we need to know? What are the key characteristics? And we identified 4. First, we want to understand our leadership identity, our reputation, our brand, and then how to use that in our organization. So let's talk about our identity. And remember, you had to take a survey before you came into class. And in a moment, we're going to go over that survey because identity is all about seeking insight into who you are as a leader. And also in relation to what surrounds you, because our leadership does change with our environment. So we're going to be talking about that when we talk about our survey next. Our reputation is what other people think of us as leaders and understanding others' perceptions of your behavior. You remember that before you came in, we asked you to describe yourself. How would other people describe you in 3 words? And what's interesting is, if you were to take those 3 words back to your team, would they say the same thing? Well, that's your leadership reputation. So we understand how we are in our environment. We understand what other people think of us. But what do we want to be? And that's our leadership brand. Do we want to be Apple? Do we want to be the Nike of leadership? Do we want to be the Tesla of leadership? And in a moment, I'm going to ask you, as we talk about your brand, well, what are the 3 characteristics of your brand, and how are you going to use them over the next 2 days and practice those 3 things with us here in the classroom? And then that's what leadership wisdom is really all about. How do you put those lessons to work for you as you go forward as a leader. The result of reflecting on life experiences to uncover insights about who you are as a leader. It's interesting that reflection is not a leadership competency. Because as we work with leaders around the globe, we find the one thing that leaders are not very good at is reflecting. So throughout this course, we're going to give you time to reflect. We're going to offer you time to journal, and we're going to offer you time to dialogue. And we encourage you to take that time, because that is the foundation for leadership wisdom. And that is also the bridge to our next major fundamental that's important to leadership, and that is learning agility. Now, when you think about learning agility, what does that say to you? What is learning agility?
Able to learn in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, able to learn a lot of different ways, sure. Learn technically, reading, interacting, reflecting. Yeah, other thoughts?
Ease in learning.
I really like the ease in learning, because what are my mental models, and is my mental framework open enough to accept all these different ways of learning? So we took this question and we broke it down again into 4 characteristics. And the 4 characteristics are, what kind of learning are we seeking? Okay? And then how do we make sense of it? And then how do we internalize it, and how do we apply it? So it's a full 360 of learning and application. And when we talk about seeking, the interesting thing is, what do we want? And so when we talk about learning agility and we think about seeking as a characteristic of agility, what do we want to know? What do we want to experience? What is our willingness to immerse ourselves in new and challenging situations that broaden and expand our experience? So a lot of times, as we know, sitting in the chairs that we have, we accept a lot from our organizations. Our organization says, please go do these things. Well, that's great. It's not what we're talking about. It's, what do you seek? Remember the leadership brand we talked about in those 3 words? Well, what do you seek to expand your leadership brand? So it's a very proactive perspective towards learning. Now, once we've sought that and we're getting that information, now how do we make sense out of it? How do we actively process curious and experimentation in order to gain insight and perspective? So how do we make sense out of what we are seeing? What are our mental models about it? What does our culture say about it? And are we being critical enough to understand how we're seeing that information? Because then we need to internalize it. We need to seek more feedback and reflection in order to embed these lessons. The hard part here is reflection. And as we go over the next couple of days, like I said, we're going to give you some time to reflect. Well, some of us take that time. Others want to move through it fairly rapidly. Today and over the next 2 days, we're going to ask you to take that time and learn a new skill about reflection and journaling and dialogue. Because once we've internalized the lessons, then we can apply them back at work. Then we can go to others and help them learn as well. And in applying, we want to access principles and rules of thumb from our previous experiences that we've sought, made sense of, internalized, and now we want to apply and use them to navigate new and challenging situations that we may seek again. So you can see the rotational nature of learning agility. And that finishes our first day. So in our first day, it's really all about you. We're going to talk about self-awareness, and we're going to talk about learning agility. Because on the second day, we're going to apply it to others. And we're going to start with influence. And in influence, it's how are you influential? What did you do to influence others, and how do you influence others? And that breaks down into 4 key characteristics. First, having political savvy. Second is self-promotion. Kind of tough for many of us. Then building and maintaining trust. But again, leveraging your networks back at work so that you can sustain that influence within your workplace. And when we talk about political savvy, it's navigating the formal and informal parts of the organization effectively. So yes, When we come in tomorrow, we will be analyzing the formal and informal, written and unwritten, official and unofficial behaviors within your organization that make up your culture. So that gives you some insight into what is actually happening in the workplace. Then we're going to talk about the role that you play. This is, for some of us, the hardest part of these 2 days, because we don't actually like to talk about ourselves, and then we don't talk about ourselves really effectively. Well, we're going to show you a framework that allows you to do that. And we're going to ask you to do that with each other here in class, and make a commitment to doing it with others once you leave. So self-promotion is key, just like building and maintaining trust. Because you may understand what's going on in your organization, you may be able to self-promote, but if you don't have credibility, if you don't have trust, you're not moving anything within the organization, you're not influential. So what we want to do when we build and maintain trust is create and keep strong relationships. Leadership is all about positive relationships with peers and other stakeholders based upon mutual respect and honesty. And then, who do we need to influence? And it's all about networks. Do we have open networks or closed networks? Who's in our network for our key leadership challenge, and how are we going to influence them? Once I go to that person, do I have trust with them? Do they understand what I can do for them? And when we go all the way back to political savvy, am I talking to the right people? So we're going to understand who the right people are, how to talk with them, build trust, and then sustain that network over time. And in order to do that, we got to be able to communicate. And that's our last key fundamental. And that's where we'll start reflecting on the class and start moving towards our back to our workplace. And 4 key characteristics in communication. The first is listen actively. And that goes beyond the behaviors. It goes to what are you listening for? We're going to talk about gathering and delivering feedback. And we're also going to talk about communicating your vision. And so when we talk about active listening, just so you know, when we, probably about 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to ask you to have a 2-minute conversation where you will get more out of it than you ever guessed. Why? Because everybody that you're talking to will be listening, not just to what you're saying, but they'll be listening for the facts, the feelings, and the values that you're going to express in 2 minutes. And now we know what to listen for. Now that we know what to listen for, how do we give feedback on that? And how do we gather feedback and deliver feedback? And in gathering feedback, we want to collect information in response to actions you have shown, or you show or have shown to others. Or, as I recently learned, it might be the lack of things that you show or have shown to others. And we're going to talk about how you can identify people to give you feedback and what you want from them. Because you're going to be delivering feedback to each other in the class tomorrow afternoon. And it's going to be a great experience. Because we're going to show you a framework where you can do developmental feedback that people are you're happy to give, and people are very receptive to. And that's where we want to focus on delivering feedback. Key communication skills for leaders, regardless of your organization, culture, ethnicity, or nationality. And then, just like we started with self-identity, remember all the way back with self-awareness, and we talked with self-identity, we're going to finish with communicating your vision. And we're going to talk about vision as an inspirational or aspirational description of a desired future state. And we're going to ask you to create your vision and practice giving that vision to others here in class, and then identifying who you're going to give that vision to when you go back to work. So we start with you and how you learn, how you're influential, and then how you're going to take that back in your organization. And those are the 4 key fundamentals that we've identified are important for leaders around the world, regardless of organization. Self-awareness, learning agility, influence, and communication. Ready to go? Let's start.